Reliability. It is the favorite buzzword of every corporate gun manufacturer trying to sell you a $2,000 safe queen. But let's get one thing straight right now. Reliability is not a slick marketing brochure. It is not a shiny, custom Cerakote finish. And it is definitely not what happens on a perfectly sunny afternoon at a flat, sterile shooting range. Real reliability is the deafening crack of a gunshot after your weapon has been submerged in a stagnant swamp, frozen solid at 20 degrees below zero, and starved of a single drop of lubrication for 6 straight months. When society hits the fan and the supply chains completely dry up, you do not want a high-maintenance diva that requires a meticulous cleaning schedule just to cycle around. You need a mechanical beast. You need a weapon that actually thrives in the dirt. Today, we are tearing down the top 8 semi-automatic rifles on the planet that run like absolute tanks. These are not delicate toys for weekend hobbyists. They are armored vehicles disguised as firearms, and you better stick around for number 1. Later in this video, I am going to expose the exact machine that took down some of the most notorious terrorist leaders in modern history. A rifle that laughed in the face of the most brutal military torture tests ever devised. The firearms industry spends millions of dollars trying to sell you fragile garbage disguised as tactical innovation. Do not let them take your money. Hit that subscribe button right now so you do not fall into their expensive traps. And let's get into the dirt. Number 8 on our list is the Ruger Mini 1.4. If you spend enough time listening to the tactical elites on the internet, you have probably heard them completely trash this gun. They look at the traditional wooden stock, the classic profile, and the lack of tactical rails, and they immediately dismiss it as grandpa's outdated deer rifle. They tell you that if it doesn't look like it belongs in a modern combat zone, it has no business being in your hands during a crisis. That is exactly the kind of arrogant, mainstream misconception that will leave you totally defenseless when you need a weapon the most. The truth is, the Ruger Mini 1.4 is a mechanical survivor. Underneath that unassuming, politically correct exterior is a scaled-down version of the legendary M1 Garand action. It utilizes a fixed piston gas system and a heavy, brutal operating rod that violently cycles the rotating bolt with an undeniable, unforgiving force. This is not a delicate, tightly toleranced race gun built for the range. Tight tolerances might win you a shiny plastic trophy at a weekend shooting competition. But in a desperate, grid-down scenario, tight tolerances equal a jammed rifle. The second the wind kicks up dust, the Mini 1.4 was engineered with massive internal clearances. It is designed to be a little loose when dirt, grit, sand, and heavy carbon buildup inevitably find their way into the receiver. This rifle does not lock up and die. It literally chews that debris up and aggressively spits it out right alongside the spent brass. It is an incredibly forgiving, working-class system that runs perfectly well dry, dirty, and utterly abused. Sure, the tactical snobs will complain that it does not deliver sub-MOA precision at 500 yards. But in a true survival situation, you are not shooting bench rest competitions. You are defending your life, your family, and your food supply at practical distances. The Mini 1.4 does not care about your expensive synthetic lubricants or your tactical aesthetic. It only cares about putting lead down range when you pull the trigger. Period. While the gear snobs are busy frantically clearing malfunctions out of their overtuned safe queens, the Mini 1.4 just keeps hammering.
It's smooth,
Number 7,
predictable, and makes every shot
9.1 or any high-quality HKG3 clone. If you want a rifle that genuinely feels like it was forged in the fires of the Cold War, this is your weapon. A lot of modern shooters pick up a PTR 9.1, complain that it is too heavy, complain about the aggressive recoil, and put it right back on the rack to go buy something wrapped in lightweight plastic. They are making a massive mistake. And it is a mistake they will deeply regret when the supply chains collapse. This rifle does not use a delicate gas tube. It does not even use a piston. It runs on a pure, unapologetic mechanism called roller-delayed blowback. Why does this matter to you? Because in a catastrophic situation, when you cannot find specialized cleaning solvents or replacement parts, Standard gas systems choke on heavy carbon and die. The PTR 91 totally bypasses that vulnerability. The action relies on heavy steel rollers locking into the trunnion, mechanically delaying the violent rearward motion just long enough for the bullet to leave the barrel. It is a masterpiece of brutal, heavy-duty engineering. But the real secret to its unstoppable nature is hidden right inside the chamber. The chamber is deeply fluted. When you fire a round, high-pressure gas bleeds backward around the casing, literally floating the spent brass on a cushion of explosive force. The result, the extractor rips that casing out of the gun with a force so terrifyingly violent, the ejected brass essentially becomes a secondary weapon. It will throw spent casings 30 feet into the next zip code, while the gear snobs are crying because their expensive, overtuned rifle just jammed on a bad batch of cheap, dirty, steel-cased ammunition. The PTR 91 is happily chewing through that exact same garbage ammo like it is premium match grade. It bends brass, it fiercely dents casings, and it simply does not care. It was built to arm a military expecting a massive Soviet invasion, not to look pretty on the internet. If you want a full-power battle rifle that will run completely dry and eat the absolute worst ammunition you can scavenge, you buy a roller-delayed tank. Number 6, the FN UFAL. If you ask the modern tactical crowd, they will tell you this rifle is an absolute dinosaur. They will complain about the length, whine about the weight, and tell you that you need a modern, lightweight AR-10 platform covered in expensive aluminum rail space. That is the mentality of someone who expects their combat to happen in a sterile, air-conditioned environment. The FN FAL did not earn the title, the right arm of the free world, by being delicate. This is a cold, hard implement of war that carved its legacy in the absolute most unforgiving environments on the planet. From the scorching, dusty African bush to the freezing, muddy trenches of the Falkland Islands. This rifle was the weapon of choice for men doing violent, necessary work. It is a full-power battle rifle designed for the exact kind of worst-case, apocalyptic scenarios that modern preppers are secretly terrified of in development. Here is the mechanical secret of the FAL. The exact reason it completely outlasts its modern competitors when everything goes to hell. It features a fully adjustable gas block. When a standard rifle gets caked in heavy carbon, choked with fine desert sand, or frozen with wet mud, the bolt carrier naturally slows down. The gun begins to choke. It fails to feed. It fails to eject. And eventually, your $2,000 rifle becomes an incredibly heavy club, not the FNFAL. When this heavy-duty machine starts getting sluggish from hundreds of rounds of absolute neglect, you do not sit down, field strip it, and baby it with a specialized cleaning kit. You simply reach up to the gas regulator, twist it open, and force a massive surge of high pressure, explosive gas directly into the piston. You violently overgas the machine to brutally blast through the filth. You are physically commanding the rifle to keep working, overpowering the debris by sheer mechanical force. Combine that with the legendary sand cuts found on the bolt carriers of many of these rifles, which literally act like steel snowplows aggressively pushing debris out of the operating channels. And you have a weapon that simply refuses to quit. The FAL is not a rifle you buy to show off to your friends on the internet. It is the rifle you buy when you know nobody is coming to save you, and your weapon is the only thing standing between you and complete disaster. Number 5, the Steyr AUG. If you listen to the internet commandos and the rigid traditionalists, they will tell you to stay far away from bullpup rifles. They look at the polymer chassis, the futuristic design, and the magazine seated behind the grip, and they immediately write it off as an overly complex, fragile piece of plastic garbage. They assume the internal trigger linkages are weak, and that the whole system will completely lock up and fail the second it gets dropped in the mud or takes a hard hit. That is a fatal underestimation, and it proves they have never actually run this weapon hard. The Steyr AUG is not a gimmick. It is a battle-hardened workhorse forged in the freezing, unforgiving winters of the Austrian Alps and proven in the scorching, dusty, hyper-abrasive wastelands of the Australian outback. Underneath that sleek, impact-resistant exterior beats the heart of an exceptionally rugged, heavy-duty short-stroke gas piston system. Think about the standard AR-15 for a second. It literally pukes hot, filthy carbon directly back into the receiver, baking the bolt and the internal components with every single trigger pull. The Steyr AUG does the exact opposite. Its piston system takes all the violent gas pressure and the heavy carbon fouling up at the gas block, keeping the actual bolt carrier completely isolated, cool, and remarkably clean. You can run this rifle for thousands of rounds in the dirt, completely dry, and the action will still cycle as smooth as glass. But the real survival advantage of the AUG, the exact reason it makes this list as an unstoppable tank, is the quick change barrel system. In a desperate, prolonged defensive firefight, the kind of absolute nightmare scenario where you are forced to lay down high volumes of suppressing fire just to keep your property and your family alive, a standard rifle barrel will get glowing red hot. It will warp, it will drastically lose accuracy, and it can eventually induce a catastrophic, life-ending malfunction. With the Steyr AUG, you do not panic. You simply grab the vertical foregrip, press a locking button, give it a quick twist, and pull in literally 3 seconds. You strip the burning hot steel completely out of the gun and lock a cold, fresh barrel right into the receiver. The machine just keeps screaming. It is a compact, close-quarters powerhouse that delivers the high-velocity impact of a full-length rifle, housed in a shell that will not dent, will not rust, and will absolutely refuse to die when the grid goes down. Before we get to the top 4, including the absolute monster sitting at number 1 that is going to completely change how you look at survival rifles, I want to hear from you right now. Step away from the marketing hype and let's talk reality. In a true grid-down collapse, when there is no synthetic gun oil left on the store shelves, would you trust a direct impingement AR-15 to protect your family? Or are you grabbing an AK-style piston gun to run 5,000 rounds completely dry without cleaning? Drop your choice and your brutally honest reason in the comments below. Let's see who in this community actually knows what it takes to survive, and who has just been brainwashed by the tactical industry. Number 4, the SIG SG550 series, which absolutely includes the SG556. Let's get the complaints out of the way right off the bat. Yes, it is heavy. Yes, it is expensive. And yes, the modern tactical snobs will smugly tell you that you are wasting your hard-earned money on a bulky, outdated European platform when you could just buy a cheap, mass-produced AR-15 and bolt a bunch of aluminum accessories to it. They look at the price tag and immediately dismiss it as a boutique safe queen for wealthy collectors. If you believe that narrative, you are dangerously mistaken. The SIG 550 series is not a fancy, delicate range toy. This weapon is exactly what happens when you take the unstoppable, violent reliability of a Russian AK-47 and hand the blueprints over to obsessive Swiss engineers who refuse to accept anything less than mechanical perfection. Deep inside this heavy steel and polymer chassis is a massive, incredibly robust long-stroke gas piston system. It operates on the exact same brutal principle that keeps the AK churning through mud and sand, but it has been refined to an unbelievable standard of accuracy and durability. It does not just survive freezing alpine temperatures, deep, gritty mud, and total neglect. It absolutely dominates those conditions. The internal components are heavily forged and machined to take a terrifying amount of physical abuse without bending or breaking. And just like the FAL we talked about earlier, it features an adjustable gas valve. If you somehow manage to choke this beast with enough extreme carbon fouling and thick mud to actually slow the massive bolt down, you do not stop to clean it. You just crank that gas valve wide open. You physically force the machine to ingest more explosive pressure, violently blowing the debris out of the action so the rifle can keep firing. When you buy a SIG 550 series rifle, you are not paying for slick internet marketing. You are paying for a literal bank vault. You are paying for absolute peace of mind. The stamped steel receiver, the rock-solid lockup, The heavy-duty recoil springs, every single piece of this machine is deliberately over-engineered to ensure that when you pull that trigger in the absolute worst conditions imaginable, a bullet leaves the barrel. It is a heavy, expensive piece of machinery. But when society breaks down and there are no gunsmiths left to fix your fragile, overtuned toys, this Swiss tank will be worth its weight in solid gold. Number 3, the IWI Galil Ace. AK purists are going to absolutely hate this, but they need to hear the brutal truth. They worship the classic stamped AK-47, treating it like a flawless, mythical weapon that can never fail. But if you have actually dragged a standard, traditional AK through deep, fine desert sand or a thick, wet swamp, you know its dirty little secret. When the safety selector is pushed down into the firing position, there is a massive, gaping hole completely exposing the internal action to the elements. Fine grit, loose debris, and heavy mud can and will pour directly into the receiver. And eventually, even the mighty AK will grind to a horrifying, metallic halt. Enter the IWI Galil Ace. If the original AK-47 is a rugged old farm truck, the Galil Ace is a modernized, up-armored military personnel carrier. Forged in the blistering heat and hyper-abrasive dust of Middle Eastern combat zones, this rifle was specifically engineered to take the legendary, unstoppable long-stroke piston reliability of the Russian design and brutally eliminate every single one of its fatal weaknesses. First, let's talk about the foundation. Instead of cheap, thin, stamped sheet metal that flexes and bends under extreme stress, the Galil Ace is built on a solid, heavy-duty block of milled steel. It is an incredibly rigid, violently tough receiver that can survive catastrophic drops, crushing impacts, and the kind of physical abuse that would permanently warp a lesser, budget-tier rifle. But the real genius, the exact reason this gun earns its spot as an elite survival tank, is how completely sealed the chassis is. Remember that gaping hole on the standard AK IWI fixed it? They engineered an ingenious, spring-loaded, reciprocating dust cover that tightly seals the charging handle slot. The moment the bolt violently cycles to load the next round, that cover snaps right back into place, locking the elements out. Ultra-fine moon dust, thick freezing mud, and driving rain simply bounce right off the exterior. The internal mechanisms stay completely isolated, protected, and free of the debris that chokes other guns to death. You might balk at the premium price tag. You might assume you could just buy 3 cheap, imported budget AKs for the exact same amount of money. But in a total grid-down collapse, you cannot carry 3 rifles. You carry one, and when your life, your property, and your family are on the line, you do not want to be holding a cheap, mass-produced parts kit that lets mud pour right into the chamber. You want a sealed, milled steel vault. You want the Galil Ace. Number 2, the FN SCAR 17S. If you spend any time on firearm forums, you already know the massive controversy surrounding this weapon. The internet experts and the weekend warriors love to parrot the exact same complaint. They call it the optic killer. They will tell you that the unique forward and backward mechanical recoil impulse of this rifle is so harsh that it will literally shatter the internal glass on your expensive, high-end scopes. Because of this, they write the SCAR 17S off as a flawed, drastically overpriced piece of European garbage. They are completely missing the point, and their ignorance could end up costing you everything. The SCAR 17S is not a delicate target rifle. It is an apex predator. It was specifically commissioned by United States Special Operations Command to be a lightweight, hard-hitting, utterly unstoppable battle rifle. Yes, it possesses a violent mechanical recoil impulse that will absolutely destroy cheap, budget-tier optics. But do you know what does not break? The rifle itself. While your optic might fail if you cheap out, the SCAR 17S is a mechanical juggernaut that refuses to die. Let's look at the actual construction. The entire upper receiver is formed from a single, continuous, massive piece of monolithic extruded aluminum. There are no fragile handguards bolted on with tiny, easily stripped screws. There is absolutely no flex. It is an incredibly rigid, armor-like shell that houses one of the most violently reliable internal mechanisms ever devised. Inside that monolithic vault is a massive bolt carrier group, driven by a gigantic, brutally efficient short-stroke gas piston system. When you fire a heavy, punishing 7.62 NATO round, the gas block takes the brunt of the explosive force. It violently kicks the piston backward to cycle the action, and then it immediately vents the filthy, superheated carbon straight out of the front of the gun. The internal receiver stays remarkably cool. It stays incredibly clean. You can run this rifle through the worst, most abrasive environments on Earth, starving it of lubrication. And that massive bolt carrier will just keep slamming back and forth like an industrial locomotive. The gear snobs will complain about the ridiculous price tag. They will complain that the reciprocating charging handle gets in the way of their modern tactical grip. But when society collapses and you need a weapon capable of delivering devastating, barrier-penetrating kinetic energy at long distances, while possessing the internal durability to survive months in the mud without a cleaning kit, you will stop complaining. You pair this rifle with a military-grade, hardened optic, and you have an unstoppable force. The FN SCAR 17S does not care about internet opinions. It cares about absolute devastation and zero downtime. The modern firearm industry desperately wants you to believe that a massive price tag and flashy tactical aesthetics equal survival. You now know the absolute truth. When society collapses and the grid goes completely dark, your life will not depend on aluminum accessories or perfectly tight tolerances. It will depend on brutal, unforgiving, mechanical reliability. Do not let your friends or family burn their hard-earned savings on fragile, safe queens that will ultimately fail them when it matters most. Share this video with them right now before they make a massive, life-threatening mistake. And if you want to keep getting the unfiltered, gritty truth that the corporate gun industry desperately tries to hide from you, hit that subscribe button and turn on your notifications so you are never caught off guard. Stay armed, stay vigilant, and never trust the hype.